Hey folks, welcome. Here we discuss real stories by real people. Today we have the story of a guy who finds his fiancée and his best friend taking things too far and crossing every boundary in the book. Let's see how it goes. I, 29 male, have been with fiancée 27 for about 6 years. Engaged, good jobs, own a home, a dog, 2 cars. Life is good. Everyone sees us as the stable couple. I have a friend who I've been very close with most of my life. He and his wife are very close with us, go on vacations, always spending weekends together, things like that. We've always all been great together. He and his wife have been having some issues since they got married last year. They were potentially discussing a divorce. My fiancé is very much an empath, so they've each been seeking her out to help them with their troubles. This was hidden from me for a few weeks because he was too embarrassed to tell me about what was going on. So they were texting and talking on the phone almost daily, unbeknownst to me. Until, on one of my fiancé's days off, she texted me late in the day saying she had driven the hour and a half to go be with him because he was in really rough shape and needed help. I ended up driving out there that night as well. Long story short, he didn't end up talking to me much about the problems he and his wife were having. My fiancé ended up staying the night with his wife. She then spent the entire next day with him while his wife and myself were both working. I understand her need to help people, but she was ignoring me and our home in the process. Since then, they've been more open about texting and calling. He will also show up at our place quite unannounced, which is fine and something they've always done. But there's times when he's been at my house during the day while I was at work, and I didn't know until I got home. I work pretty far from home and have regular hours. She does not. Sometimes little details of their stories don't line up. Timing, things like that. They've been texting constantly, sometimes 100 messages in a day. But she keeps deleting her texts with him, which is something she never does. She has texts on her phone from when she first got it 2 years ago. I was getting suspect, so I did a bad thing. I hacked into her family Verizon account and pulled her texting logs. Right away, it was pretty obvious that they text pretty much all day long. She is known amongst our friends that she never responds to anyone's texts or calls, to the point where her parents will just call me if they need to get in touch with her. The text logs just didn't make sense, sometimes late into the night and starting again very early in the morning. A few occasions of them texting around 2:30 a.m. on a weeknight, after we had been in bed for hours. I was with him last night and snuck a peek at his phone. Yes, I know I suck. He deletes all her messages too. I don't know what else to do. I can't accuse them of anything without having proof. The texting is suspicious in itself, and I have the logs to back it up. But in the process, I have to admit that I hacked her dad's info to get it. So if I say anything, it's a point of no return conversation and will end badly in one way or another. Edit. Technology was deployed. Suspicions are confirmed. Found some real evidence. Proof they met up on days she had off, more than once. Messages the next day about too exhausted, feeling like I was hungover because I was on such a high yesterday. Texts were hard to recover fully as he has an Android and she has an iPhone. There was not as long, historic of an amount of content between them, and there were definitely some things missing. No actual explicit conversation except once. She said she was thinking about him while she was masturbating, and she just had 5 hours worth of foreplay. That was last Wednesday, which is also the last time she and I have had sex, and she threw herself at me. But also later that day was messages between the two of them about how excited they are. There were I miss yous and other things proving an emotional longing for one another. It also turns out that this started before things with his wife got very bad. There's a nasty trail of breadcrumbs here. Lines have very obviously been crossed. The question is how and how long. I'm not really all that sure what to expect out of our conversation tonight. I took a few days off from work to use as a cushion if things get bad. I guess I'll write an update later. Update. Well, it was a worst-case scenario. I think the fact it's taken me 9 months to collect my thoughts is a testament to that. I haven't been wallowing in a hole of self-pity and anger, although it would be easy to do so. Frankly, this is looking to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm thankful every day that I have a second chance to do it right. So I essentially pilfered her phone's entire history. And that was really the key to Pandora's box. Texts, call logs, photos sent, photos received, Google searches, directions she mapped. It was a lot of information to process, but it literally spelled out her every move for several months leading up to the discovery. The texting tapered off as they realized I was onto them, and it became much more time on the phone instead. I can't even imagine the conversations. It had been going on a lot longer than I thought. It was a Sunday night when I sat down and had time to pore over the results. I had obviously been playing out my next moves in my mind for weeks. I shot my boss an email, said I was having a personal crisis and would contact him in the next 24 hours, but would not be in for the next several days. Not awesome, considering I had only been at the job a handful of weeks. He was gracious about it, and I'll be indebted to him for it. I got up and left the house like normal. Went to have breakfast by myself, took my car to the shop for some routine maintenance, and stepped outside to chain smoke cigarettes and make some phone calls. I called my best friends, told them what was happening, got their advice on how to proceed, or more or less to validate my current direction of sitting her down that evening and interrogating her. One of them was going through something similar, but much more public. They had interesting insight. I was home mid-afternoon. She came home unexpectedly, shocked to find me there. I told her I wasn't feeling well and came home early. She said she had come home to let the dog out and that she had more errands to do for work, but would come home quickly. She left holding her briefcase, which she had already brought into the house for the day. She had planned to stay there. At that point, I had location on her phone. I watched her drive down to the grocery store, make a 90-minute phone call, and then return home. She came in, clearly nervous. I sat her down and began to ask her questions, basic ones about the state of our relationship, at the state of the one she was having with him, expressing my concerns and stressing that I had made it clear I was uncomfortable with it for quite some time. She acted beguiled at my thoughts, dismissing them in the way you would expect. I began asking more specific questions about skipping work and meeting him in obscure places. My favorite example, one particular state land we've all been hiking at a bunch. He and I grew up out there. It's where he proposed to his wife, and as I would much later come to find out, apparently the first place he and my fiancée screwed each other. I started quoting pet names they used for each other and songs she would send him. She flatly denied the oddly specific questions I was asking at this point. I knew she was full of shiz, and she just kept denying herself the possibility of me knowing all of this. She was in a relative state of shock. I remained calm. I didn't yell or lambast. We reached an eventual point, after several hours, that she wasn't sure if she loved him, or that she did, but it was a different way than she loves me. But she was nonetheless still denying ever sleeping with him. Maybe some kisses and touching. I was eventually told that I wasn't manly enough and didn't turn her on the way he did. But it was okay to live in my house and sleep next to me because I took care of her. The one thing I did learn that night was that she also slept with his wife, in our bed, and that my fiancé told him about it the next day. The wife didn't tell him, nor did she know that she told him. That was until the day that he stormed into their house, declaring that he was leaving for Tennessee to stay with relatives because everyone was going to find out, and that now we can finally get a divorce because he can be with the woman he loves, and screw you because you screwed her too. And that's exactly what he did. He ran off for almost 2 months before coming back around. I haven't seen him or spoken to him, nor had any communication whatsoever via text. Frankly, I don't have anything constructive to say to him, and he's too much a coward to ever come to me with anything admirable, so I suspect he'll never say anything at all. That was one of my oldest friends, and he referred to me as his best friend for over a decade. Best man in his wedding, and my fiancée was his wife's maid of honor. Honor indeed. While some people were hiding from their problems, other people were changing their locks. I let her spend one last night after that first night we talked everything through. By the time we finished talking, it was after midnight. It was a somber and sober night's sleep. We woke the next morning as if something had died, and it had. She didn't know yet, although her actions said otherwise. I told her to phone a friend she could trust, gather what she needed indefinitely, and I would be back in no more than 3 hours. I went to her parents' house, sat them down, and told them the abbreviated version, see above. I loved them like family. It was breaking my heart to know I was going to lose them too. I owed them the truth about why I had to walk away. She hadn't even admitted it to me, knowing I had proof. I knew she would never tell them, and maybe that wasn't my place and was selfish of me. But out of my respect for them, I had to know they knew the truth. They were shocked, to say the least, and were very calm and neutral about the transition. I missed them. I returned home to find her with 2 of her friends. They were packing her things. They looked confused and upset. I just said my hellos and kept to myself. They were departing for another one of the girls' houses, and more of their inner circle were meeting there. I changed the locks. I changed all the dogs' veterinary and registration paperwork to my name. I contacted my attorney and had them get prepared to deal with the house. I got a call from one of the girls at the inner circle gathering. She tells me that Fiancée is bawling her eyes out on the phone with him, saying she has no regrets and that she loves him. The inner circle is disgusted. So am I. I demand she returns home and I take her engagement ring. In many more words, I tell her this is it and she'll have no part in my life. The wedding is canceled. The news slowly ripples. I get weeping phone calls from all 8 parents involved. Groups of friends are torn. Families as well. I have her family members calling me, asking why the terms have changed as they were given no explanation. Therapy is had by many. I went to the gym. Boxes are packed. Memories are sorted. Sheets are burned. New sheets are soaked repeatedly. It felt very strange for a while, as if 2 people had suddenly died, but there was no funeral. His ex-wife and I kept close, but not that close. We've always had a love for each other, but one of friendship and not lust. We kept each other afloat for a while. It became clear that this was one of the most important friendships I had left, and that we shared something significant from here on out. Lots of friends ebbed and flowed. All the right ones are still around. I worked intensely. I got in shape. I got to experience the incredibly shallow world of internet dating. I started living my life again. For me. And of course, for my dog. I've found happiness in a lot of new ways. Treated myself to a great summer of friends, concerts, camping, mountains, and water. I realize how lucky I am that we weren't yet married, and especially that we had no children. Some people dodge bullets. Some people dodge freight trains. The ex-fiancé and the ex-husband are living together now, as far as I know. The ex-wife has met a guy who I think is super awesome and exactly the type of man she deserves. He absolutely adores her. We all do things together a lot. As for me, I met a lovely lady at a barbecue this summer. I went to this event knowing I would only know the host and that it would be good for me to meet some new people. If it had to be this bad, it will be worth it in the end. That was my mantra in the beginning of this, and with each passing day, I realize that I'm right. He dodged a freight train. Imagine he had to discover it after he's legally tied down to her. I just will never understand folks who have long-term affairs while planning to get married. Like if you want to screw around freely, just walk away. Don't marry and make another person miserable. Fiancé and the best friend deserve each other. They sound equally horrible, and props to OP for handling this with much poise and elegance.